Two big topics today, and of course, one of them is going to be China and their ban on Bitcoin and crypto in general, and whether or not that is shifting. Also, the week ahead in terms of a lot of macro news and indicators that could really push Bitcoin and many of the crypto markets much higher. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. We'll break it all down for you today and get into all this good stuff because there is some good news out there, I think, and for general, maybe a lot of optimistic scenarios that could be starting to form. So stay tuned for all this. Let's thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. You want to get into self-custody, step away from those centralized exchanges. When you make your exchange or your trades on those centralized exchanges, that's great, no problem. It works fantastic. But at the point where you're ready to hold your tokens and you want to hold them throughout this bull market, then jump over to Tangem. All you have to do is go to tangem.com. It is slim as a bank card, secure as a bank vault. You can store, buy, and earn or transfer and swap thousands of crypto coins and tokens. So check it out. Very easy to use. Just hit that Get Tangem button. It's going to open up that 3-card set. You've got a lot of options there. I like their new color options, which are pretty cool. And use our link. Use our link down below. It does help the channel. All right, let's go into a few points here. I want to start off with the week ahead, because there's a few things that are pretty significant on this week right here. NVIDIA's 10 for 1. That's a big deal, I think, because as goes NVIDIA and AI, kind of goes the S&P 500, and that, of course, has a lot of implications for crypto in general. WWDC event is happening right now. So far, I haven't seen anything major, even though I am watching the feed on that. We're going to drop a video a little bit more about that today because of the impact on what Apple, Meta, and all those companies are really going to have on crypto gaming. So make sure and check that out. We got CPI inflation, which I think is the biggest situation. So Wednesday, we'll be doing a pretty big video on CPI inflation, how it's going to come in, how this starts to push into, because remember, I won't say almost all, but a lot of the European central banks have started to drop their interest rates, and we are starting to see rate reductions around the globe. So could the Fed actually join the crew here? I don't know. We'll see. Fed policy decision on Wednesday also. We'll see the dot plot come in. Powell's press conference. We'll see that, of course, and show that this week. And then jobless claims are on Thursday. This is going to be interesting. It's only the initial ones. So that's one thing to be a look at. And then, of course, Tesla. All of that can have a little bit of implication because we still have the situation with Elon and his pay that hasn't been done. So we'll see. All right, so a couple of news points right here. Bybit welcoming Chinese users, sparking hopes that maybe there is a little bit of a U-turn on this ban. And if that were to happen, this could be pretty significant. Just example here, this was crypto trading and mining. This was all done in 2021. Everybody remembers that because many people would still say that was what caused the last bull run to prematurely end. We'll see. Now, when you see some of the stats on this, you might agree with that. The knock-on effect saw 56% drawdown on the Bitcoin price over 10 weeks. That's what happened. Bybit seemingly opened up the account registration for users located in mainland China. So what do they know? And is there something changing? That's the big question. There's no official confirmation from Beijing just yet. But if you look at the rest of the world and where profitability is coming from, well, you kind of pay attention. Now, this was a scenario that plays into this right here. China's cryptocurrency investors made gains of about $1 billion in 2023. All right. And think about this right here. Mainland right here achieved a little over $1 billion in 23, ranked 4th behind those in the US, the UK, and Vietnam. That's how much they made. So, and they're ranked 4th, and they're not even allowed to do it. So that's significant for a country like China to be in the top 4 of something that's not legal for them to do. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. Here's a point right here. Remember this tweet? This just shows you the tenacity of this market. This was August 2nd last year. All right. And crypto's illegal in China. Binance does $90 billion of business there. Binance's China business generated $90 billion in trades. Trades occurred despite the official ban. All of that happening, and then 1.15 billion in profits. So pretty significant, I think, if this were to get lifted, if we saw something that could play into that, what kind of impact would that have? Let me know. Drop some notes down in the comments. I'd love to get some of that. We'll try to get to some questions. Let me see if they've got the VMix social up here. It looks like they do. So we'll try to get to some questions today and cover some of that. Of course, let me know your thoughts on how this might play out for potentially crypto in general. Here's the Kobe EC letter coming into a couple of things that get into a lot of the macro pressures that continue to face the U.S. Still a lot of positives, I think, from a political landscape, a regulatory landscape, but I think also maybe finally a little bit of pressure off of the American consumer. It's not off yet completely. It's not as though we're going to see a pivot, but I do think there's a little bit of pressure off. The average interest rate on $34 trillion in U.S. debt is now 3.2, highest since 2010. Got to lower that rate. 5.9 trillion of the national debt right now in Treasury bills, average interest rate of 5.4%. This is just mind-boggling. Meanwhile, record 9.3 trillion of national debt is going into mature in the next 12 months. This is a problem. I think that we will continue to see fiat devaluation. This is something that we'll continue to see as a problem. Even if the Fed cuts by 1 to 2 times this year, the debt will have to be refinanced at more higher rates than what it was at, even if they cut twice this year. So, because there's not enough. Remember, a lot of that debt was acquired when rates were much lower. So now we've got refinance issues dealing in within the average interest rate right there on the Treasury debt. Right there is where we're starting to just spike right there. This is not good. This is not good. I want to go to a clip. Now, this clip gets into a little bit around what are the potentials around if we could get one rate cut, or will there be a rate cut at all? Take a look.
Jobs number threw things into a little bit of chaos last week. It makes people kind of question and wonder where we're standing. How do you feel about things?
Yeah, I mean, that 272,000 non-farm payrolls on Friday, that was a pretty big number. People definitely weren't expecting something that strong, but it definitely is probably a pretty good indicator that the economy is doing a lot better than people were thinking.
Therefore, as a result, that means great news because the markets are going to continue to climb, or is it a concern that the market is less likely to get that Fed put, kind of things where you see a rate cut coming from here?
I don't see a Fed rate cut coming from here. I think you look at the CPI numbers, they're just too strong. You look at the unemployment numbers,
but does
they're too strong.
If we don't get the cut, is it better to just have a good economy where things are continuing to hum along, or has the market been anticipating that there has to be a cut this year?
I think the market got that reaction Friday, and I don't think you really need the cut that people were anticipating anymore for the market to be able to hold up and do well. It's probably not going to be a rip-roaring market, but it can be healthy.
You said the market doesn't need a cut. You mean in June, or do you mean in 2024?
I think even without a cut in 2024, even though it's...
Will there not be a cut in 2024?
I don't think there should be. If I were running the Fed, it wouldn't be my decision. I don't get how you get to 2% inflation number if you're running over 3 now.
But you think there will be, but you don't think there should be?
I think more likely than not there will not be.
There will not be.
You think there's no cut in this calendar year? Just to pin you down here.
So I think it's 50-50 as to whether the Fed does it, but I don't think it would be a smart move. I think you're going to let inflation run hot if you do that.
All right, so he's struggling with that no cut for 24. It's one of those things I still kind of apply to that. I still think it might be one cut. That only because I think jobs will eventually start to move into a position that might get a little dicey for the Fed. Plus, if we continue to see a little bit of adjustment on inflation, remember, we still have a lot yet to do over the summer months that could be a still late Q3, early Q4 possible in terms of a cut. This is U.S. consumer inflation expectations. Actual is 3.17 versus the 3.3 in the previous. This is not a lot, from a sense of a quick move downward. But remember, it is slowly treading toward Powell's potential nirvana of 2%. Does he ever see 2% again? That's the real question. I think a lot of analysts still believe that's not necessarily going to be the case. If you look at trueflation, which I think is maybe the route to take here, you've got 2.17 right now on trueflation actual when you look at how that plays in comparison to some of the other CPI data that we get in. Other things to look at, Bitcoin price settled at 69K after a dip wipes out almost 1.3 billion in open interest. This, of course, we saw play out on Friday with a big red day market, started recorrect over the weekend. We did see movements up, and now we're starting to see that back in. If you look at the chart right here, we saw this slight dip right there. It's very interesting. This was painted out. If you go back to our other videos, this is our sentiment track right now. So it's still holding in zone right now. Ironic that that was the day we anticipated a little bit of a dip there. But it is holding here, holding around 70,000 today. We're kind of in and out of that 70,000 range. If we start to break past this, I think this is going to be a catalyst where we could see some pretty big upside for Bitcoin overall. I want to go over to a couple of the news stories here. Was there something in here I wanted to showcase? Yeah, a couple of points here. Largest cryptocurrency endured. That was the volatility we saw. This was, based on Wall Street Open, thanks to what we kind of saw as the employment data. This was then compounded by a rout in altcoins. Many people saw that. This, of course, was maybe in reaction to what happened on Friday with Roaring Kitty, because that was, just a little bit of a train wreck, even though it's very odd, the impact that he has on the market. Many people thought, well, the Roaring Kitty event showed something less about what he's doing, but more about what the market is doing. Over 600,000 people watched that live stream. What does that tell you? There's an appetite for memes. There's an appetite for these kinds of movements and investment opportunity. And why is that? Well, because most of these are at best, kind of a gambling play. And when you look at the valuation of today's dollar versus what you're getting in terms of inflation, people are trying to figure that hedge out. And for 600,000 people, that's the thing I think that scares Wall Street more so than anything, for sure. It was confusing enough to trigger a risk off ahead of the U.S. inflation numbers, and this, of course, comes in on Wednesday. Probably not a coincidence that alts and memes started collapsing with about 40 billion wiped out in market cap. This all happened last Friday. So let's go. We got a couple of questions in. Make sure and drop them in over on the side. We'll try to get to a couple of those. Bitcoin ETFs take in $2 billion now in just 7 days of trading. That's crazy. $2 billion in 7 days on these ETFs, continuing to fly. Bitcoin versus Buffett. This, of course, being probably, I would say, one of the best investors of our time. And you kind of look at what their total growth was versus the steady growth portfolio. And the comparison is right there. Warren Buffett's portfolio obtained around a 10.03%, with about a 13.67% standard deviation in the last 30 years. 30 years, that bad? Not bad, really. I mean, think about that. Versus what we've seen in terms of growth on Bitcoin. So since then, trading debuted in 2011, Bitcoin has delivered a staggering annual return of about 104%. So if you're playing that game versus what we've seen in the stock game, well, I guess you're in pretty good shape. But remember, it's time in the market, not timing the market. So a big one. Some good questions coming in. I'll try to get to some of those. Make sure and drop some over there. Here's a big one, of course. This is Mr. Trump himself calling himself a crypto president. And this was at a tech fundraiser. And one of the notes that I remember coming in on this was the amount of fundraising that they were doing in Silicon Valley, and the fact that these were a lot of new people that were contributing. So when you have new people coming into that, especially in Silicon Valley, that has a bit of a dynamic shift that I think a lot of people have not been anticipating. Here is a clip that goes a little bit further into this, because this is Biden versus Trump economics. Take a look.
If Trump were to regain the presidency, former President Trump, what are some of the planks of his plan? I'm seeing something about even further cuts for corporate taxes. Is that really being considered?
Hey, Joe, good to be with you, and good to be with Jason as well. Look, I think there's no question the top priority will be to make sure that those tax cuts that Art Laffer and I and Larry Kudlow and others helped put together for Trump. And, we did it. There was a lot of controversy about whether it would work. And, clearly it did. We had a boom in investment.
Jason, do you, I think I asked you about the capital gains increase, and you really weren't that anti-capital gains that President Biden was talking about. And what about the taxing unrealized gains? Both of those, to many people, those are both sort of anathema to any normal economic thinking. Do you You go along with both of those ideas?
I mean, they're both way better than any of the tariffs that we've just been talking about, Joe. But look, there's a lot of economic logic to taxing unrealized gains. Right now, one of the problems with the capital gains system is that it locks in your gains. It dissuades you from selling because you want to hold until later when you get a lower rate. That is a proposal that applies to a relatively small slice of people. We could argue what the right rate of taxing capital income is, and I'm open to a variety of things. In fact, I'd like to reform the tax code so we had permanent expensing and got rid of the interest deduction, more incentives for business investment going forward. But, we're going to need to raise revenue somehow.
Well, okay, well, that'd be an interesting way to do it, is to tax unrealized gains. Think about the 401ks, real estate. I mean, this could go, once you get on that slippery slope, who knows what could be happening. Don't forget, too, what we're dealing with here between Biden and Trump. It's really about trying to figure out how do you get those votes swinging through. Trump has even gone to the extent of talking about removing taxes on tips. This would affect a huge economy because you got the gig economy out there. Won't even go on the online side of tips, but you also have the hospitality industry. That's about 15 million people employed. Then you have the gig economy itself. That's probably another 9 million that are out there. So you're starting to pile up potential voters, even with these, hints that you're doing this. Remember, he's still hinting that he's a crypto president. So I don't know. This is still an intriguing situation overall. Don't forget, too, we've got another clip here that talks about what would happen in terms of how some of these agency heads would fare under Trump. One of them would be, of course, Jerome Powell. Take a look.
For a typical family, you're talking an extra $1,700 of costs. And then you add that to the other inflationary parts of the agenda. You have advisors to President Trump saying that he would fire Jay Powell within the first 100 days. That would set up a massive amount of uncertainty, court cases, and the like. Let's say he doesn't fire him in the first 100 days, but he just tweets at him saying that he's worse enemy than President Xi, which is what he did the last time he was president. One of the things that President Biden has done that I really respect has been to respect and strengthen the independence of the Fed, even while it was raising rates really rapidly. What happens if that comes to an end? So I think there's a lot of peril here. A lot of it can be expressed, especially in terms of inflation and tax increases on middle-class families.
All right. Well, I don't like the idea of tax increases on middle-class families. That's going to be one of the least areas because that's one of the most taxed categories right now. I think it's probably going to come from the billionaires if we do see it. Granted, a lot of people would argue that Trump kind of goes in that direction. Don't want to get in a political scenario, but he does lean toward corporate tax cuts and taxes for the wealthy. So there are tax cuts for the wealthy. So there are scenarios on both sides of it, but it all boils down to this at the end of the day, and that is really what you guys are looking for, and that is the freedom to go out there and do investments and things like that so that you yourself can kind of manage your own future. And that's the problem that a lot of times big government gets in the way of. So that's a big deal. We're going to go over to the poll. Do we have a poll today? Yeah, let's take a look at the poll real quick. All right. And when will the China unban? People are saying maybe in 2024. Interesting time here. So, because there's some intrigue. That's a pretty good number too. 59% over 2025. Think about that too, timing wise, because you got a lot happening from a geopolitical situation. You got a lot happening from rates now being adjusted and some economies coming out of what has been very challenging at times. You think about the EU. And you look at China and the opportunity here at timing-wise with what they're trying to do. It's just very interesting how this could be doing. But you still have the scenario of BRICS and what's happening there. All that ties into, I think, a more strategic look ahead. So China could be looking at that and saying, hey, we're going to open this up a bit. That would be a big one for sure. A few questions in over on the side. It says, no tax on tips would make such a difference to small income individuals. No doubt about it. That's probably one of the biggest points. Listen, it's been fought around for quite some time. But if you think about the hospitality industry, it's 15 million employed. So let's say there's probably at least half or more of that are in tipped positions. So that's a pretty significant vote swing. If you could even get, 10%, that's still another 1 million to 2 million votes that you could probably start to secure. So that would be huge. Nassim says, if Trump wasn't a liar about everything, then we might believe something he says. I think everybody has. Have you met a politician yet in the United States? China needs to be a front run the East with the ban lift. That would be huge. Like I said, Drew, if they do it, it would be significant. And it also could set the tone for blockchain to become a baseline for them. And if that does happen, remember, they're looking for an alternative to the fiat system, the dollar, the American dollar. So, and with the pressure they're putting into BRICS, very interesting. Paul, short-term pullback on render. Yes, heard some news was coming out from Apple. I haven't heard it yet. I don't think I would probably hear it from the crypto pit if we had something big from WWDC, but nothing yet. Still, if you think about render, its future, I think, is still very, very positive. Again, not investment advice, but just, we look at the tech, the opportunities of those kind of projects, and they're big. XRP is going to rule the world. Man, I'm telling you, I hear more and more stuff that is very bullish on XRP. We had the guy in last week, that Aaron McDonald. And when you think about Futureverse and the tie to Root Network, then the tie to real world assets, a stable coin, there's just a lot of things happening over there. Truth is, 59% of people want China to unban. Yeah, for sure. Is that still going? Is the poll still going? I'm kind of curious if it changed up much. What was the number now? Did it go over 60? Yeah, 58. Okay, all right. Well, there you go. Bitcoin banning, banned or all proof of work mining in general. Conflux, well, yeah, Conflux was actually launched, I think, after that. I don't believe that one is, because we've reported on Conflux before. It was actually a mover at some point. But that was a huge deal. Timing-wise, yeah, I still believe, yes, it did thwart the bull run for Bitcoin. All right, I'm assuming you mean RFK. RFK Jr. is... Oh, okay, Roy and Kitty, yes, Roy and Kitty, yes. I'm thinking politics here, yes. Well, did he act like an idiot, or is this guy just, crazy like a fox? You never know about this. I mean, like I said, 600,000 people watching this guy. That's no joke right there. That's no joke. One more China ban, Bitcoin that would be, the more China bans Bitcoin, the more people want it. Yes and no. I still believe, when you have a billion opportunities for other people to get to it, you're opening up the opportunity, I think, for the globe. Cut would be somewhat good. Remember that this is something Darius Dale talks about often. It says, when you see the pivot occur, expect the market to start its downturn. In other words, that's the end of that bull run and cycle. So it could be cycling out. So timing wise, if people say, well, we may not even see a cut this year, we could push this bull run into quarter 1 or even 2 of next year, which some people are still saying that might be the actual end. Phil says Jasmine is going to be on every Apple product next spring. That will be interesting. China is more likely to keep the ban in place given permission under their credit score. That's a problem, yes, I agree. But I think they have a bigger reason, and that is the ability to drive digital asset values globally. And you think about that and what it can do to the alternative ecosystem of the reserve currency. And, it's kind of like little pecks, because that's how you take down societies. Remember, those are the big deals. All right, if you guys are not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in. We have a lot announcing this week that I think you guys are going to love. And one of the big things that we've got this week is a new airdrop program that we're doing for our Diamond Circle members, our Mastermind members, and our MSI members, people who get the Market Sentiment Index. So be on the lookout for that. We will be explaining more about that as we go this week. Very easy. Follow me on X. It's just @Paul Barron. I'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.